49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel looks, well, washed. We'll tell you what you should do with him in your Dynasty leagues next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we are breaking down the slop fest between the Rams and the 49ers. If you like touchdowns, this was not the game for you. Just a bunch of field goals. The 49ers wins 12-6 in one of the ugliest games that you will ever see. But, Kate, I want to start on the 49ers side of things because Deebo Samuel complained about not getting touches this week. He was really wanting the ball, so we figured this would be a squeaky wheel, gets the grease type of game. He had 2 kick returns. He had 7 targets. He had 2 carries, and it got you a grand total of 18 yards. How washed is Deebo Samuel?
I have some concerns, just to be clear. Yeah, not fantastic. And there have been concerns, right? Because there has been plenty of opportunity here with Brandon Ayuk's injury, with, quite frankly, all of the injuries that the 49ers have dealt with. George Kittle hasn't been fully healthy. Christian McCaffrey, a huge role in the passing game. He has been out most of the year. Like, there has been room for someone to step up. And the fact that it's been Juwan Jennings, who's been the more reliable guy on an every down basis, is concerning. I mean, he's got 3 games of 15 or more fantasy points this year. There is no consistency. Like, I think in terms of just having a floor, right? Like, we've seen the floor right now, and last night was it. But I do wonder how much of, like, Deebo just doesn't look himself. Like, and when I say himself, he hasn't looked necessarily like prime Deebo in a minute. I do kind of wonder, we'll remember back several weeks ago, Deebo was dealing with pneumonia and was in the hospital. And then all of a sudden, just kind of like, he's out of the hospital. He's going to play this week. Okay. I've had some respiratory problems in my life. I've had, I've had my asthma shares. I've been in the hospital with things, breathing wise. And guess what? You don't feel so great the next day or the next day.
I can confirm this, by the way.
Yeah, you could. Marcus is currently dealing with pneumonia. So, Marcus, tell me, how would you feel if you had to go play a football game right now? Like, I have to envision that, like, okay, so there's the aspect of how you feel in the moment dealing with pneumonia. And then there's the aftermath of pneumonia where you don't feel like you can condition at the same way that you could before. Like,
I mean, I'm wheezing going up and down the stairs. So I'm not a good example right now, but I think that could explain some of the struggles in season.
Not all.
Yeah. I also think that 2021 season where he had 77 catches and 59 carries, the style of play that he has always had has been violent, right? Like, he's been somebody that's bounced off tackles, that refuses to go down on first contact. And now that he's getting older, I just wonder if those touches are starting to add up. Katie, I mean, he's not the youngest receiver. He'll turn 29 next month. This is generally when we start to see receivers decline anyways. And when you get somebody who is as reckless and as physical as Deebo was, I think it's only fair to assume that player's not going to age very well. I just have some real concerns about, like, what the next 2 years are going to look like for Deebo Samuel, because he's not the most natural receiver. Like, he's a good receiver, make no mistake about it, but he's not Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. He is a very unique receiver that I just don't think is going to age particularly well, and I think you're seeing it now.
Yeah, and I mean, let's talk about the future. So I think there's pretty much no world where any of us can envision Deebo Samuel being a San Francisco 49er next year. Where does he go? And are there places where he can maintain some dynasty value here for our rosters? Because obviously we have such a respect for Kyle Shanahan, his play calling. Like, we know that Kyle Shanahan can scheme the appropriate usage to get the most out of his weapons. Who's going to get the most out of Deebo Samuel if he's not a San Francisco 49er?
I mean, I do think there's going to be teams that are interested in him, and I think there are teams that can use him effectively. Maybe it's Mike McDaniel in Miami. I could see the Ravens being an interesting team, considering they like to have a physical brand of football. I think Pittsburgh even makes sense. I know Pittsburgh was close to trading for him during the NFL draft, so I think there are going to be teams out there. But honestly, I think like what you saw last year from him is probably the ceiling now. 60 catches, 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. He gives you, maybe a couple hundred yards on the ground. I think that's the very tippy top, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's more years like this where, he's a 600, 700 yard receiver and he's, the third, fourth option in your passing attack. I just think the days of Deebo being a fantasy difference maker are done.
And I mean, to be clear, like a guy that can post, a steady, maybe 1,000 scrimmage yards every year, that's nothing to scoff at.
Of course.
And if this is an opportunity to buy low on that, and if he's like, let's say your wide receiver 3, suddenly that feels a lot better, doesn't it?
I still think that's too rich. I don't think I want him to be, as you were talking, I'm thinking I want him to be like my wide receiver 5, which probably, honestly, Kate, just tells me that I'm not going to have any Deebo Samuel in my dynasty leagues. I've already traded him away in every one that I've had already. Okay. I just can't see me being back in here. I could be wrong, though.
Fair enough. I think landing spot, like a landing spot's always important for these guys that we're projecting to not be with their teams anymore. But landing spot, especially, I think for a player like Deebo, is going to be particularly meaningful just because the uniqueness of his play style and the unique things that he's very good at.
Can I ask you about Brock Purdy really quickly before we go to the Rams side? Not a good game for Brock Purdy. I know the weather had a big part to do with it, but 14 of 31, 142 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Kate, on the season, he's got 15 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. How concerned are you about Brock Purdy from a dynasty perspective?
I'm not too concerned. I mean, it's kind of like the story of the 49ers in general. They've been without so many playmakers. I think they're playing with a lot less than they ever have before. Now, I do think, there were some balls that could have been caught. I mean, there was very nearly like a Deebo Samuel touchdown last night, for instance, and maybe that would have changed the trajectory of this entire conversation. But he didn't come down with the ball, and that changes the outlook of not just Deebo Samuel, but also his quarterback. Like, I feel like there have been a number of plays like that. I think the absence of the personnel that they plan to have all season long, like that changes the way that they need to play football. And I don't know that this entire offense has adjusted to the lack of weapons as well as it should have. And Brock Purdy has a part in that, but I wouldn't look at this season and say like, oh, he's Mr. Irrelevant.
No, I think he's established himself as a starting quarterback for as long as he wants to be one. It's just, I do wonder what the fantasy ceiling is, because I think the weapons are going to be worse next year. Honestly, I think Deebo's going to be gone. Brandon Ayuk is going to be trying to come back from a major knee injury. Maybe Ricky Pearsall will step up. You will have Jaywan Jennings another year. George Kittle's getting older, and I don't see George Kittle as the type of player that's going to hang around the NFL for 5 or 6 more years. So I do wonder what this passing offense is going to look like, especially once Brock Purdy gets a big contract extension. I think he's better than what he's shown this year, but I don't think he's quite as good as the numbers that maybe he posted last year. Somewhere between there is, I think, the median Brock Purdy that we're going to get for the next several years.
I think that's a great way to look at it. A lot of what we got last year was, that insane passing efficiency. And I mean, we knew when he was, throwing touchdowns at like a 7% clip that like he was going to have to come back down to earth. He did. And because running's not a big part of his game, he's capable. He can scoot. He can scoot a little bit, but like
Yes.
that's not the crux of his game. The crux of his game has been his efficiency as a passer. And when you take away that efficiency, yeah, you have a much, much lower floor for fantasy. Even if any given week, he could be a QB1, right? Like maybe not the QB1, he could be a QB1, but it definitely lowers the floor significantly.
All right, let's talk about the Rams side of things, which wasn't that much better. Puka Nacua had a decent day, but I want to talk about Kyren Williams, who has 58 carries in the last 4 games. We'll talk about his dynasty value next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. Here's why you need to check it out. You can win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away over $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking at Rico Dowdle, who has the 3rd highest rushing over-under on Prize Picks, which is, unbelievable. I'm still thinking of taking the over here. It's quick, simple, and so much fun to challenge myself and my friends. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. This episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. And the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully created gift packages, including gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more. Save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners will get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. That is 50% off with omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are breaking down the Thursday night slop fest between the Rams and the 49ers. Kate, not a ton on the Rams side, excuse me. Puka Nacua, 7 for 97, continues to be a superstar. But I wanted to talk about Kyren Williams, who once again just continues to amaze me. 31 touches in this game, totals 112 yards. Over the last 4 days, 58 carries as Sean McVay, I swear, is trying to run him into the ground. What do we think about Kyren Williams, not only this week, but his long-term dynasty value?
I've got to admit, the usage kind of freaks me out just a little bit. There have been 3 running backs with 500 or more carries dating back to week 1 of last season. That is Derrick Henry, who has proven himself to be the most reliable, durable tank of a man in ever. And then it's Saquon Barkley, who, obviously has had stretches of his career where I think he's had some bad injury luck, but generally speaking, been pretty durable. That has not been the case for Kyren Williams. So to see him up there in the ranks with two of these guys that I consider, among the more durable workhorses in the NFL, kind of surprising. And it does make you wonder, okay, like we know that Blake Corum working behind him. Obviously, we haven't seen him in a full capacity in the NFL, but we know he's capable. We know he has experience at a pro style offense. So like, we know Sean McVay really likes him. They spent the draft capital on him. Like, it just makes you think, like, okay, they are gonna go 100 miles per hour with Kyren Williams until they run into a brick wall.
That's what it feels like. It certainly feels like they are just going to run him until the wheels fall off. Now, I have not seen any of that from Kyren Williams. He looks just as good this year as he did last year. And I was watching it late in the fourth quarter. I'm like, I want to see what Kyren looks like on touch 28, 29, 30. And he looked just as good. There was a couple times where the Rams were trying to run out the clock, and he was moving piles. I mean, he looked awesome in this game. Obviously, whenever you have that much work on your body in a adjusted amount of time, I do worry about the long-term effects. But Kate, every week going forward, and I'm going to assume in 2025 as well, I think you're going to rank Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. And then I think that the list gets pretty small of guys that you would take over Kyren Williams, just because we know this offense is good and Sean McVay has no problem giving him 30 touches every single week.
Yeah, and I think that is a great thing for contending rosters. Now, if you're looking at a multi-year rebuild, Kyren Williams is not the guy that you want to be targeting because of that heavy workload. It's one of those things where it's kind of like, how far is he going to go past his first NFL contract? I don't know. The skill is 100% there. But again, the heavy usage is, somewhat concerning. Now, Kyren Williams, generally speaking, I have to say, like, watching him this year, one of the biggest mismatches in terms of like how good I feel like he looks on an every down basis versus the box score. Like, there are times I looked at the box score last night. It was like 20 rush attempts for like 65 yards.
I know.
And I was like,
I know.
And you're watching him play and you're like, he looks so much better than that. So like, he's this guy that I think regardless of the box score, he hasn't been the most efficient running back this year. But like, when you're watching the tape, he explodes off the page. So like,
I think it's because of the offensive line. Their offensive line has been beat up all year, and they're just not opening the same holes that we saw last year. But Kate, I 100% agree with you. Like when he's one of the most fun running backs to watch on tape because he fights for every yard. I gotta believe the Rams are going to fix their offensive line this offseason. They're going to get healthier, and maybe we'll see the efficiency go up. But I'm not stressing about the efficiency at all here. Not at all.
Yeah, and I maybe the extra workload, can sometimes change that, right? Like, I don't know. It's just hard to envision a running back that probably has a safer floor right now than Kyren Williams on a week-to-week basis, because you know that Sean McVay wants to get him the ball 20 to 30 times a game. And that's saying something when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford and two really good receiving options in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Like, the fact that he continues to generate these touches and put the ball back in Kyren Williams' hands, despite even the, fumbling, that's been a problem this year. And yet he's still the guy for Sean McVay.
I wanted just to talk about the Rams receivers really quickly. Here's my thoughts on Puka. Is there another receiver in the NFL that's more fun to watch than Puka Nacua? I mean, we don't have to talk about his dynasty value because, I mean, he's pretty much locked in where he's at. It's going to be hard to trade for him. You're not going to trade him away. Is there anybody more fun, Kate?
No. He's so fun. He's so easy to root for.
He is easy to root for.
He's I think everything that you would want in an elite wide receiver. Now, one thing I did tweet during the game was that I feel like there's a brick wall that Puka Nacua is never going to be able to permeate in terms of his perceived dynasty value. Like it feels like he's just never going to find himself in the ranks with a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, and a Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I have to envision that this is literally like, it just feels like we're never going to, look past the draft capital. But man, we should, because watching
Well,
him.
I wonder if it's the injury stuff though as well, because he did
Yeah.
miss a big chunk of time with injuries this year, and that's the biggest reason why he fell in the draft was because of injuries. But I think if he can start to stack together a couple of these seasons, because Kate, this happened with Antonio Brown. Like I think it took people a year longer to catch on to Antonio Brown because of his draft capital, but once he put together 2 complete seasons, he was wide receiver 1 in Dynasty League. So I think it's going to happen with Puka as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
What about Cooper Kupp? 0, 0, 0, 0 across the board.
My dynasty teams were not happy with the big 0. I mean, the biggest lesson for me is just that Puka Nacua is the wide receiver 1. Cooper Kupp, like he is, treat him as a wide receiver 2 on any respective offense with a ton of upside, granted. But yeah, he is not the captain. No,
there you go. Let's do some commotion players that we are promoting from our bench into our starting lineups in week 15. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. This is a great time to bet on the NFL. Week 15 might be the best week of NFL action that we've had all year. We've got 2 games with both teams having double-digit wins this year, including Kate's Steelers, as much as I hate to say that. But go visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcast. All right, Kate, it's commotion time. We are promoting these players from our bench into our starting lineups in week 15. Who do you got?
Let's be clear. We're going to need a lot of help this week because we didn't get the fantasy scoring that we need out of this matchup. So we've got a lot of ground to make up here. I'm going to roll with a name that I don't necessarily know is going to have a big game, but I just kind of have a feeling. I have a hunch. I'm kind of intrigued here by the prospect of Josh Palmer here going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hasn't been like a consistent asset. Justin Herbert isn't fully healthy either, which like kind of freaks me out, but neither is Ladd McConkey. Just missed week 14. And Joshua Palmer, I think, just kind of looks like the best wide receiver on the field outside of Ladd McConkey. And I think that this is a matchup that's going to be very conducive to a pass-heavy game script. Just coming off a game with like 9 targets, 6 receptions, 78 receiving yards against the Kansas City Chiefs. Not an easy defense, tough divisional matchup. Like, I think that there is going to be some opportunity here for, this to be an intriguing matchup for Palmer specifically.
So I like the thought here. I'm actually going with somebody different in the Chargers passing offense. I'm going with Stone Smart, a tight end last week who filled in for Will Dissly, 3 catches, 54 yards. I actually had to go look up Stone Smart's kind of pre-draft profile because I didn't remember him at all.
Who is he?
I know he was He came out in 2022, didn't get invited to the combine. He was listed as a quarterback / athlete coming out of college. Wasn't really sure what his position was. Wasn't really a tight end. But at his pro day, 6'4", 225 pounds, ran a 4.62 with a 40-inch vertical and a 10.8 broad jump. The dude is an athlete, and he's built more like a wide receiver than a tight end. You saw it last week. I wouldn't be surprised against Tampa Bay's defense, which is awful, which is also missing Antoine Winfield, that are all pro safety this week, if Stone Smart doesn't get 7 or 8 targets.
I think that's a fantastic call. Absolutely love that.
I want to also mention, like, David Njoku likely not going to play this week. Jake Ferguson has been struggling. Like, if you need a tight end, I think Stone Smart can be a good fill-in this week.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. Let's keep it rolling with like backups that appeared out of nowhere. How about Isaiah Davis, backup RB3 for the New York Jets, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, I mean, mail it in, like they're done. And they don't have the defense to keep up, I think, even with the New York Jets offense. Last week, we kind of expected Braylon Allen to come out. Breece Hall dealing with an MCL injury. It doesn't sound, we haven't gotten any formal confirmation, but like the general vibe has been that like he's kind of struggling with this injury right now, which you don't like to hear. Doesn't sound like he's going to be good to go. But last week, when we expected Braylon Allen to come out and just like handle a ton of work, split it right down the middle with Isaiah Davis. Isaiah Davis was the one that came down with the score. And I like this matchup defensively a lot. I think they're going to have the perfect game script to run the ball out a little bit.
All right, last one. Do you want a really gross one from a really bad team, Kate?
Absolutely. I keep it disgusting. Let's go.
I like Calvin Austin this week against the Philadelphia Eagles because George Pickens, from a couple of the reports I saw Gary Dulac say yesterday, that there's a chance that George Pickens just misses the next 3 games because of how they play 3 games in 11 days. He just might not be able to make that turnaround. Calvin Austin is somebody who has already been involved in the offense. I know he didn't have a big game last week against Cleveland, but he's made some big time plays this year. Has scored 4 touchdowns. I loved him coming out of Memphis. I think if the Steelers need to create big plays in their passing attack, I wouldn't be surprised if Calvin Austin is the guy, not Mike Williams and not Van Jefferson, that gets those opportunities.
Yeah, I really like that call. And going back to last week, I want to remind everybody, Calvin Austin was going through concussion protocol most of the week. So like the team didn't, I don't think they had an idea of whether or not they were going to have Calvin Austin available. So I don't really think they game script to feature Calvin Austin all that much last week. So I think most people were kind of surprised to see that limited workload without Pickens, but I think that was just a feature of how they designed the offense in practice that week and who was the wide receiver getting reps behind George Pickens. And I think that was Scotty Miller. So I think that was just kind of the way that they designed things in practice throughout the week. I think Calvin Austin could be in for a good game. This is a tough secondary, but if you're looking for a guy that can just break one off, we know it's Calvin Austin. He's got the speed. He's got the juice.
Yeah. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy week 15. Good luck in your fantasy playoffs. And we will see you right back here on Monday.